Place. And I saw there the 7 stars, which were like great burning mountains. Then the angel said to me, "This place is the ultimate end of heaven and earth."
I'll go here. Let's see.
It forms a white-hot spiraling feature called, and it rounds and feeds it, and have the physics to describe. It's chaotic and not well understood. Verses 10 through 16. A place beyond the great earth where the heavens come together. And I saw a deep pit with heavenly fire on its pillars. And I saw inside them descending pillars of fire that were immeasurable in respect to both altitude and depth. And on top of that pit I saw a place without the heavenly firmament above it, or earthly foundation under it, or water. There was nothing on it, not even birds, but it was a desolate and terrible place. And I saw there the 7 stars, which were like great burning mountains. Then the angel said to me, "This place is the ultimate end of heaven and earth. It is the prison house for the stars and the powers of heaven, and the stars which roll over upon the fire. They are the ones which have transgressed the commandments of God from the beginning of their rising, because they did not arrive punctually. And he was wroth with them, and bound them until the time of the completion of their sin in the year of mystery." The fact that this place is beyond the great earth firmly establishes its location in outer space. When it says that it is the place where the heavens come together, this indicates that it is a boundary to the fabric of space and time. The deep pit is the infinite bending of time and space that occurs beyond the event horizon. Again, the pillars are the radiation jets that pour out of it. The fact that stars, a code word for the fallen angels, are in orbit around it correctly indicates that stars can be and often are captured by black holes.
So there's a lot of verses. That's not the only one. And there's more descriptive verses. So I'll get into that. But what I'm doing is writing an essay about it, which is not to say that is objectively talking about that. So it's a hypothesis. a structured probability assessment based on multi-layered descriptions. Introduction. The Book of Enoch contains a series of passages describing a location characterized by extreme environmental, structural, and dynamic features. These descriptions have traditionally been interpreted as symbolic depictions of divine judgment or cosmic imprisonment. However, a closer examination reveals that the text provides a highly structured and multi-layered description that aligns closely with characteristics of a specific class of astrophysical phenomena. This essay does not argue that the text definitely describes a black hole. Rather, it applies a probability based on an analytical framework to assess rather the density and specificity of the described features increase the likelihood that the passage corresponds to a real phenomena rather than being purely symbolic. Observational data from the text. The following elements are directly drawn from the passage. Environmental conditions, a place without a heavenly firmament above or an earthly foundation under it. Not even birds. I do find it interesting that he says not even birds. I'd have to say, why not even cats? Why not even crocodiles? Why not even any other animal? Well, birds are associated with the sky. Just a slight indication that it might be something that Enoch is feeling is sky related, even though it's not in the firmament, the known sky. The description establishes absence of atmosphere, no firmament; the absence of ground, no earthly foundation; the absence of life, not even birds. This strongly suggests a non-terrestrial environment, inconsistent with mountains, volcanoes, or any earth-based location. Now, I had GPT assist me with this because GPT has a very way of arguing and keeping things grounded. So to work some things out, it also has a habit of putting words into my mouth. So if I say something like, I'm assessing this for a probability versus possibility scale, it'll then respond saying a statement like, this doesn't objectively prove that blank. Well, I didn't say that. So there has to be some back and forth working between how I describe something. Also, another thing that's important when working with GPT to make a essay like this is to be careful with your description. So one thing that I stated that was objectively wrong, just didn't realize it at the time, should have been more descriptive about what I meant, was I said, the black hole is the only thing in the universe that we know of that can imprison a star. Well, that's not true. An orbit can imprison a star. It can, an ejected planet or a planetoid can be imprisoned within our solar system orbit. So you could use that term, imprisoned in an orbit. So I had to be more descriptive. The only thing that can imprison a star in the specific way that's being described. So a lot of things had to be worked out between my way of making conversation and how GPT how it perceived my specific words. Structural geometry, a great opening, a cleavage that extended. This indicates a central void or boundary, a structure defined by depth and opening rather than surface from. Energy structure, a great fire that was burning and flaming. This suggests intense energy surrounding the central structure, not localized fire like volcanoes, but persistent large-scale energy field. Dynamic behavior, the stars which roll over upon the fire. This is one of the most critical features. Stars are not static. They are moving along a boundary condition. The motion is described as rolling over an edge, even in the terms of a black hole. confinement, binding. The stars of heaven are bound in this place. This introduces confinement, inability to escape, a form of constraint, or excuse me, cons- constrained motion or capture. Jet emission features, pillars of fire. This describes directional energy extending outward, structured emissions rather than diffuse radiation. Scale of magnitude. Neither its extent nor its magnitude could I see. This implies incomprehensible size, inability to measure or define limits. Boundary conditions, the ultimate end of heaven and earth. This suggests not merely a location, but a terminal boundary of a system. Temporal duration, bound until the completion of 10 million years, detained here forever. This introduces extremely long durations, effectively unbounded or indefinite confinement, pattern density, and structured coherence. Individually, each feature could be dismissed as symbolic. However, the arrangement does not rely on individual parallels. Instead, it rests on pattern density across multiple independent layers: environment, geometry, motion, energy, scale, duration, and boundary behavior. When these are considered together, the description forms a coherent system, not a loose collection of metaphors. 3. Comparison to known phenomena. When the full stack is evaluated, the closest known match is supermassive black hole systems. Correspondence overview. Text features and black hole features. Text features: great opening cleavage, event horizon, gravitational well, surrounding fire. Text feature: surrounding fire, black hole feature, acceleration disk, or excuse me, accretion disk. Text feature: stars bound, black hole feature, gravitational capture. Text feature: stars rolling over the fire, black hole, orbit decay toward event horizon. Text feature: pillar of fire, black hole, relativistic jets. Text feature: no firmament, no ground, black hole feature, space environment. Text feature: immeasurable magnitude, black holes, extreme scale, relativistic distortion. What was that again? Text feature: end of heaven and earth, black hole feature, breakdown of classical space-time behavior. Text feature: long indefinite durations, black hole feature, extreme time dilation, prolonged process. Important clarification. This does not claim that black holes are the only possible explanation in the universe. Rather, no other known phenomena matches the full set of features as closely. Elimination of weaker interpretations. Common interpretations such as volcanoes, mountains, terrestrial features fall under multi-layered analysis. Fail under multi-layered analysis because they cannot satisfy absence of atmosphere, absence of life, cosmic scale, structured star interactions, jet-like emissions, boundary level behavior. Thus, these interpretations remain possible but low probability. Symbolic and structural dual layer interpretations. The text explicitly states transgression, punishment, imprisonment. This indicates a moral judgment layer. However, this does not negate the structural description. Instead, the passage can be understood as a physical or perceived structure described using moral language. Probability assessment, based on the methodology of avoiding assumptions, evaluating internal and external factors, assessing pattern density, distinguishing probability from possibility. The conclusion is the density and specificity of the description increase the probability that the passage corresponds to a real phenomena rather than being purely symbolic, meaning it wasn't the ramblings of a goat herder from 300 BC or earlier. Mechanism of perception. Open hypothesis. If the description corresponds to a real phenomena, then Enoch must have perceived something structured. Possible mechanisms include visionary experience, non-local perception, unknown cognitive or informational transfer, external showing consistent with the narrative. No single mechanism is asserted as fact. Conclusion. The Enoch passage presents a multi-layered, structured description that aligns strongly with the characteristics of a supermassive black hole system across geometry, dynamics, scale, emission, and temporal behavior. While symbolic interpretation remains valid, the density of the correspondence shifts probability toward the possibility that the text reflects a perception, direct and indirect, of a real phenomena. The conclusion does not claim certainty. It asserts only that the alignment is too structured to dismiss casually, and therefore warrants serious consideration within a probability-based analytical framework. So that's what I have to say about that. I can play more music.
The image of the stars was completely dark, yet I could see the flame of its fire, and I saw deep churches as well as a few of the nationwide ministries, but only got one response, and that by a person who held that if it came from an apocryphal source, it wouldn't be worth his time to look at it. Only now do I see that this was probably for the best, since I have come to find another wrinkle in this mystery. These chapters can be combined in such a way as to form a coherent fourth chapter, comprising all three without having to alter the sequence of any of the verses in any of the chapters. The combined material reads as follows. And I came to an empty place, beyond the great earth, where the heavens come together. And I saw a deep pit with heavenly fire upon its pillars. I saw inside them descending pillars of fire that were immeasurable in respect to both altitude and depth. And on top of that pit I saw a place without the heavenly firmament above it, or earthly foundation under it, or water. There was nothing on it, not even birds, but it was a chaotic, desolate, and terrible place, for there is not ground there as upon the earth. And I saw something like an invisible cloud, and though I could see that it was completely dark, yet I could see the flame of its fire, because it was burning brightly. And there were some things like bright mountains which formed a ring around it, and were sweeping to and fro. And there I saw 7 stars of heaven bound together in it, which were like great mountains, and burning with fire. And that moment I said, for which sin are they bound, and for what reason were they cast in here? Then one of the holy angels, Uriel, who was with me, guiding me, spoke to me and said to me, Enoch, for what reason are you asking, and for what reason do you question and exhibit eagerness? These are among the stars of heaven that have transgressed the commandments of the Lord, and are bound in this place until the completion of 10 million years, according to the number of their sins. I then proceeded from that place to another place, which is even more terrible, and I saw a terrible thing, a great fire that was burning and flaming. The place had a cleavage that extended to the last sea, pouring out great pillars of fire. Neither its extent nor its magnitude could I see, nor was I able to estimate. Then I said, what a terrible opening is this place, and a pain to look at it. Then I asked one of the holy angels who was with me, saying to him, what is this bright thing? For it is not a heaven, but merely the flame of a fire which is burning, and a voice of weeping, crying, and lamenting, as well as strong pain. Then Uriel, one of the holy angels who was with me, responded and said to me, Enoch, why are you afraid like this? I answered and said, I am frightened because of this terrible place, and the spectacle of this painful thing. Then the angel said to me, "This place which you see is the ultimate end of heaven and earth. It is the prison house of the angels, the stars, and the powers of heaven. They are detained here forever. Into it shall be taken the spirits of sinners, blasphemers, those who do evil, and those who alter all the things which the Lord has done through the mouth of the prophets, all of which have to be fulfilled. And the stars which roll over upon the fire, they are the ones which have transgressed the commandments of God from the beginning of their rising, because they did not arrive punctually. And he was wroth with them, and bound them until the time of the completion of their sin, in the year of mystery." The fact that a fourth account of this black hole.
So that being said, the probability shifts more toward actually seeing what we're looking at. Moreover, looking at this particular area, where is it? Right here. And that also shifts the probability that theology isn't just possible that the tooth fairy wrote it. It's also possible it's the ramblings of a goat herder from 1000, 2000 BC. But the probability is that it's not the ramblings. So while I don't specifically agree with this guy, his internal factors are Christian, which is why I wrote the essay the way I did, there still is weight toward the probability that Enoch was either taken or shown the very phenomena that we're looking at in this particular area. It's described with a perfection that is stunning. Not only that, but not just the pillars that are immeasurable, two of them, the fiery thing with a cleavage and a great opening, and inside it. Now, of course, somebody might say you can't see when a star's inside. Yes, but when Uriel describes him as rolling over the edge of the fire, which is exactly and objectively how stars enter the event horizon, that could very well be what Enoch was referring to. Not necessarily inside inside the great opening, could be right on the edge. And what does that imply for ancient theology? It shifts the probability toward, number one, if he was taken to see this or shown it in any way, then to think that how these celestial beings or angels are described, and what they're described as having the ability to do, is not bound by space nor time, which means it would be just as easily, and it wouldn't be extreme, to think that he was actually taken there. Again, the probability is that if he's right about this, he's right about their abilities. And of course, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, as well as the Quran and some other theologies, you have these beings being able to take physical form and etherical form. So again, there's no reason to think they can't transmutate Enoch into etherical form and take him for a little ride into the heavens. Of course, another thing, I look at it kind of like the drain of a bathtub, which would be the ultimate end of the, here we go, the ultimate end of the bathtub, like the ultimate end of the bath that you're taking looks a little something like that. And that being said, what does that imply? Or what does that shift the probability to for Christianity and or even Judaism, ancient theology? It implies that it's a very real phenomena. It's probable that it's a very real phenomena. It's less probable, but possible, that the Tooth Fairy wrote it, less probable, but possible, that it's the ramblings of a goat herder. So for those not considering that Christianity has any weight or this theology has no weight. It's objectively probable, which is what I've established in my essay. That being said, I think you can't just dismiss this, nor can you dismiss the abilities described of these celestial beings, I'll call them. And that being the case, perhaps it should just be taken a little more seriously than it is. I've heard interpretations that they're talking about volcanoes. Well, there's birds flying around volcanoes. So if you're, taken into the air to look at a volcano, I don't know how stars would roll over the edge of a caldera. Don't think volcanoes are immeasurable. I know that Enoch is also taken to the four corners of Earth, and through numbers, he derives a astronomical calendar system. Very interesting. But I think ultimately being able to write an essay, an analytical essay of probability factor, this should be objectively taken far more seriously than even scientists take it. So scientists often atheists, right? I don't know if that's authority bias or bias about what we think we know now. Oh, it's impossible to travel these distances. It's one of the most ridiculous things I hear in modern science. Faster than light communication is impossible. It's a barrier. Yeah, from our current perception, it is. But again, he certainly seems to be describing some very specific details about the very thing we're looking at right here. Are there any other things that match the appearance outside of Earth? No firmament above, no earthly foundation below, void of all life, chaotic. And the functionality of the very thing that's being described is a prison for stars that are imprisoned in a specific way, rolling over the edge of the secretion disk, aka the edge of the fire, and forever. With time dilation, it could be objectively stated that a star could take forever to reach the center of a black hole because it warps time and space. And since it even does that, you couldn't exactly say that warping time and space and traveling these distances is impossible either. So there you have it. What's up, Penn? Oh, well, don't be on any of those star systems.